Today, it's known as Communication Workers of America Local 34001. But to reporters, it will always be known as Local 1. In 1933, renowned columnist Haywood Broun called for the formation of a newspaper writers' union. Cleveland was the first to answer the call.
We were number 1, Minnesota was number 2, New York was number 3. Our members, especially in Cleveland, where the local was founded, are very proud of that.
Altogether, 7 locals responded for that first, in that first wave. They met, they organized the union, had their first convention in 1934, and have been negotiating wages and working conditions for members ever since.
The members in Cleveland decided that they needed a full-time person, and they hired Mr. William Davey as their first executive secretary.
Bill Davey I knew personally. He was a very fine man. His roots were in the Welsh mines. His family were miners who came to this country and brought with them the social justice heritage that they had as far as organized labor was concerned.
From its inception, the Guild has worked to secure reporters' wages, benefits, and First Amendment rights. Throughout its history, Guild members have taken their place on the front lines in battles large and small.
The beer can incident happened in the tumultuous year of 1972. And there was a guy on the paper who was an assistant city editor by the name of Jim Flanagan.
Jim is on the late desk, and there was a late rewrite guy who had asked him, Jim was going to lunch, and he said, Jim, when you come back, would you bring me a beer? So when Mr. Flanagan came back into the building, he was met by a security guard because Flanagan was carrying this unopened can of beer, not in a bag, just carrying it in his hand.
This would have been June. And as I recall, our contract with the plane dealer, the Guild contract with the plane dealer, expired on the 1st of June. So we were basically without a contract anyhow.
And the next day, he was called into the office and notified that he was laid off for 2 weeks in contemplation of discharge.
You know, it seems to me that the Newhouse organization, this billion-dollar organization, is not going to want to close over a can of Budweiser. So why don't we say, well, we're without a contract now, bring this guy back, or we'll shut the place down, we'll go on strike.
So when we held a unit meeting to discuss the matter, we recommended that a strike vote be taken.
Not only did they take him back to work and not leave him on suspension, they gave him an extra week of vacation, you know, for his nerves because of the, you know, the stress they'd caused the guy.
But many issues, including wages and benefits, remained unresolved.
The negotiations continued with very little progress, and ultimately we went out in November, I believe November 20th, 1972.
Suddenly, just out of the blue, where the police came, the detective in charge said, break up the picket line, and we refused to do it. And so from around the corner came a line of 6 horses.
There was a police captain there who kept ordering us to disperse. Well, we felt that we were within our rights to stay in front of the building. We stayed there, and then ultimately this captain gave the order for the Mounties to charge our gathering in front of the building.
There was someone from the UAW there, a business agent who was an experienced union man. And so he immediately told us, circle the horses. Just keep walking, but walk around the horses.
I recall very clearly the one policeman who was on foot had this hickory club, or whatever the hell they put in those clubs, and they're hefty. And he came up to me and he raised, and he went like that, and just as he came near my head, he said to me, we've got orders to get you guys out of here. Act like you're hurt.
I will say, to the credit of the police, they weren't there to be strike breakers. They were going through the motions of doing the job that they had to do.
The strike was successful at that point. We went back into bargaining, and 3 days later we had a contract.
It was on television, of course. It made national news, Time magazine and all. In a couple of days, the company settled the strike, and we went back to work.
It showed the management, it showed the city of Cleveland that the newspaper guild was an organization to be dealt with. And that gave us the kind of power that you need in any bargaining situation.
I look back from a perspective of 30 years, and I would say that we have had 30 years of peace in part because of that strike.
77 Massillon strike started in March. We were on strike for 5 months until August. It was one of the coldest, if you remember that period, the winter of 76 to 77, when we had one of the blizzards. The winter ended about June. So it was very cold, but they did not publish the paper. I don't know, 5 months is, if you ever make that up economically, but it was a wonderful experience because I got to know all the people in the paper, every single one of them. Gee, I remember thinking, gee, I thought we'd get a little more than this. And I remember Jack Weir told me, well, you always get that the next contract. And the next contract, he was right. We got the best contract we ever got.
The Cleveland Press had changed ownerships, and we were all wondering over those in the early 80s about what was going to happen to the Cleveland Press. In 1982, the Cleveland Press died. And we use that term in newspaper because it is like a death. People consider it like a death in the family when their newspaper they work for dies.
As a result of that, the Guild suffered about a 1/3 loss of membership. We had about 800 or 900 members at that time.
At noon that day, the Newspaper Guild led a march from our offices at 18th and Superior to the press offices at 9th and Lakeside. And we marched in unison carrying a banner expressing our appreciation and the grief we felt for the loss that they were going through when they lost their jobs, and the loss that the city had for losing a second daily newspaper. The Cleveland became a one newspaper town. That's not a healthy situation.
It was the first layoffs we had in the history of the newspaper, in the newsroom, and a lot of us didn't think it was going to happen until it did happen.
That part of the contract had never been used before. We had to actually sit down with a company and interpret what it meant.
We're able to save 2 people from losing their jobs by getting the company to put them into other open positions.
We held fundraisers. We raised enough to give all of these people an extra paycheck when they left.
I think the foundation and the tone that we set during that period helped us many months after that.
I didn't worry about whether somebody liked it or not. I felt I could write what I saw and what I believed to be the truth.
I can say what I need to say and fight for what I need to fight for and not worry about losing the job.
It gave an atmosphere of security so that I know that willy-nilly they couldn't remove me from my job, that there were steps they had to take before that could happen, that there were things in place that forced them to deal with me as a human being.
It's enabled me to see the extent to which people, the lengths to which people will go for what they believe in, you know. Some people will go this far, some people will go that far.
Just that added comfort that, you know, knowing that someone has your back all the time.
I got into it, I enjoyed it, I seemed to do well at it. It just became part of me.
You didn't have to worry about kissing butt.
When I started at the paper, this was the first union paper I worked at, so it took me to learn and to hear from people who are already established members just what it meant.
People become comfortable and forget exactly the safety net that the union is.
The union is there to act as, you know, kind of your pseudo-attorney.
Unity, solidarity, that's what a union is. It's called collective bargaining because the employees come together collectively to bargain with the employer, who has all the power, but you do the work. If he doesn't show up one day, job still gets done. If you all don't show up one day, he doesn't have a product or a service.
It gives them a voice, and collectively, it gives them a much stronger voice.